Hey, what's up everybody? It's Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome to another official track gameplay in MX Simulator round number 4 of the Outdoor Nationals from High Point. And I'm going to talk about a couple different things at the beginning of this video, then break down the track itself for a lap or two, and then break it down into some real-life moto talk. But what I want to hit on real quick is that finally, I am back. You guys have been watching a bunch of like pre-recorded videos the past, it's been about 2 weeks, honestly, now at this point. I had kind of pre-recorded about 11 videos or so, stockpiled them up, and then I got married 2 Thursdays ago and then was on my honeymoon in Jamaica all last week. So finally back on like a normal schedule of same week, same upload type videos. And so we're back with that. And then the other thing that I wanted to talk about was, because of my schedule being all crazy with the wedding coming up and all that, I actually had done a Thunder Valley gameplay after the Thunder Valley National, and kind of recapped the Thunder Valley National and like my thoughts and opinions on the season thus far. So what I'm going to do now is kind of transition the rest of Outdoors into I will play the official tracks in MX Simulator after the real life nationals already happened, as a way of kind of wrapping up the whole week, like a synopsis of this race, both in sim and in real life and all that business. And I think that'll work out a little bit better, because like indoors it was tough because it always felt like the track had changed quite a bit from the pre-race track that I would play. And these tracks are a rendition of the 2017 version of all of these tracks. Like, even though it says 2018 High Point, it is the 2017 High Point track replicated. So that's always like the tough part, is that if the track changes dramatically, then obviously there'll be a lot of people commenting on the videos saying it's not the 2018 track and that I'm an idiot. So usually we play them beforehand, or I play them beforehand to not only synopsize the previous week race, but also the upcoming race on the track itself, and then talk a little bit about the track and any changes that might be coming up on it. But now we can talk about any changes that existed on the track that were not in the sim version, which actually this one has pretty much nothing. I think just about this entire track stayed the same from 2017 to 2018 in real life. And yeah, pretty decent track. I mean, I talked about it a little bit in my Reflex High Point gameplay video, where I don't like the current rendition of these tracks. I wish it would go back a little bit to the old version, which had the big turn double at the bottom of the hill down here. I don't know, it just seemed like it had better flow. It's had pretty much a lot of the similar corners, but the way that the track connected to each other just, I don't know, felt better in my opinion than it does now. So neither here nor there. The sim version of this track was, I thought, a pretty good rendition of it, but it was met with some scrutiny by the people that raced it, as it not being as another tough track when it came to the road settings that they've been using. And the MXS CMF track crew worked really hard on getting their road settings perfected in this national season, and it's definitely going to be a process. I know it's not quite there where people want it yet, but I feel like it's definitely gotten better as the rounds have gone on from what I've seen. I haven't raced the races, so I can't obviously speak for what those guys are talking about, but I don't know, just visually standpoint, I feel like it looks and rides a little bit better. Like I caught some glimpses of the broadcast from High Point. I didn't see much of the Hangtown broadcast, which shout out to Moto Agogo for jumping in and helping out while I've been gone this past week and a half. But the broadcast from High Point seemed like the track late in the race was too much, like the road was over the top, but the middle of the race, it hit a really good sweet spot, and everybody was able to kind of venture out and find their own good lines to hit and stuff. So it's coming around. I think it'll get there. We'll obviously have Muddy Creek coming up on Wednesday evening, which I'll be back streaming again. So that should be a good time, and hopefully the road comes around and works a little bit better. But this track I thought was pretty good, and glad I got to see it race a little bit, even though I haven't been doing the broadcasting. So let's break it down into some real life moto, and for the first time all year, I'm actually, well, I'm not talking about Thunder Valley, but we're breaking it down on the track that was raced the prior weekend before. So I think that this is going to be a good indication. Like, I can kind of point out some spots where I thought certain things were going on or what have you. And I'm going to talk about 250s first, because I felt like the whole 250 race, like both races, were kind of, I don't want to say boring, but for as entertaining as that class can be, it seemed like there wasn't many places guys could really make passes or anything like that. And I don't know, the track was so beat up by their motos because they went second. They went, for the first time all year, they were after 450s, that it just seemed like guys were struggling. Late in the moto, guys were falling off a little bit, fitness-wise and whatnot. So I just thought it broke down a little bit too much for those guys' liking, and then it was just, it's like slot car racing, it was just like all over the place, pretty one-lined and whatnot. So I don't know, I feel like the 250 class could have been better here, and the 450 class, in my opinion, was great. But I don't know, it was pretty standard. I feel really, really crappy for Jeremy Martin and really the whole Geico Honda team, because it sounds like they've been working on a new engine since Thunder Valley, and had a couple issues at Thunder Valley, but obviously J-Mart still won. And then the second motos at High Point, they lose 2 engines as Chase Sexton went up in smoke like 10 minutes into the moto. It wasn't that deep in. And wouldn't you know it, J-Mart, who had a pretty comfortable lead going and was going to win the overall and just looked, phenomenal, normal J-Mart out there. And kaput, there goes the bike. Initially, it was kind of weird because it looked like there was an issue just with his starter button, like as if he stalled it in turn 1 and then the starter wasn't working. Turns out that it wasn't actually a engine expiring, as an ECU failure from what I have read. I could be wrong, but they're trying to get the bike fired with the screwdriver in the pit lane, couldn't get it to go, so then they had a couple guys over there, they were working on maybe just resetting the ECU, but ultimately J-Mart pulled out of the moto, and it was a bummer because, like I said, he had that thing won. He was going to win that race, and going away from the field, and now he is 23 points down Plessinger, who ended up going 1-1. Plessinger looked really good that first moto. I think that he was aided by a good start, while the others around him that are championship contending didn't start exactly with him, so that was kind of a bit of the struggle for him. But I mean, Plessinger's kind of rising to the occasion this year. When others are having the issues, Plessinger seems to step up to the plate, and that's kind of always the problem with him, I would say. Like, not a bad, well, it was a bad thing because he wasn't putting it all together because of it, but every time it seemed like he was given an opportunity, something that he could take advantage of to either get himself back into a championship hunt or gain some big points in a championship. It was always something weird with him that he ended up squandering his opportunities, whether it be a crash or mechanical or you name it. Like, he just had so many weird little things go on these last couple years that his speed was there, but it kind of took him out of championship contention year after year. Now, like I said, it seems like he's capitalizing on those things, which is good because it definitely is going to bode well for him going into the 450s, which he will not be doing in Supercross next year, but it sounds like he'll be on Factory Yamaha Outdoors next year after he defends his Supercross title. We'll have to see how that plays out, but I mean, if I'm Yamaha, he's definitely the guy right now that they need to be paying attention to. It sounds like Webb's going to go to KTM, so the Webb at Yamaha experiment is going to come to a close, and Plessinger being the big guy that he is, and he's always kind of been a more finesse guy instead of a wing it guy, I think he's going to be outstanding on 450s, especially outdoors. So definitely going to be a guy that when he gets on the big bike, I think he's going to do even better than he's doing now. And I'm definitely looking forward to him more so than J-Mart on the big bike, because we've already seen kind of what J-Mart can do this year on a 450 and Supercross. And while it was good, he still needs to find that little bit extra, I think. So like I said, 250s was pretty bland. Marchbanks, last I heard, is they think he has a torn meniscus in his leg or in his knee, I guess it would be. but they're going to have an MRI done. I'm sure that an update will be out by the time this video is out, so of course I won't have an official update because it's only Monday and this video is coming out on Tuesday. And let's see, anything else? Broken collarbone for Enzo Lopes. Kind of a bummer for him as he just finally got signed on for the year with JGR. So he said either Redbud or Southwick is going to be his return time at the moment when he thinks he could be back. Savatgy had a big crash in the second moto, but it sounds like he's uninjured. I think that's about it for injuries and all that. But that was a 250 class. Let's get to the 450 class because I feel like there's a lot of talking points from this 450 class this weekend. And obviously the biggest talking points, or I feel like the biggest talking point, because we've seen it out of Tomac all year, but look at Marvin Musquin. Like, this is expected to be a Musquin-esque track anyway, so you could kind of write it off as that, as like, well, maybe he only really showed up on this track, but I still don't feel like he went back to the drawing board. He kind of did his homework in that off week, and it seems like he's kind of figured out whatever it was lacking at Thunder Valley and at Glen Helen, because while he's not a big fan of Glen Helen or Thunder Valley, he's done well at both tracks in the past, so it was a little bit weird to see how far off of like Tomac's pace he was, because at the beginning of the year, you know, he was at Hangtown, for example, he was pretty much the second best guy by a long shot. He was only about 10-15 seconds behind Tomac in both motos at Hangtown, whereas Glen Helen and Thunder Valley, he had motos where he was almost a minute back, if not more. So definitely seemed like, you know, something was going on in the Musquin camp. I'm not sure if, you know, maybe there was a lingering issue, like a crash or something that he had, that he had hurt you know, maybe he hurt a wrist or something. I really don't know, but it didn't seem like normal Musquin. Now we get to High Point. He qualifies well, but doesn't qualify fastest, which Blake Baggett has got to like figure out why he isn't the tallest guy on the grid, and he's on a really good bike with really good power, and he never, ever, ever gets starts. It's ridiculous. Like, it seems like he gets good jumps off the gates, but then just gets blown apart down the straightaway, which I don't really get, because like I said, he's not the biggest guy. Like, Musquin and Tomac are both like bigger dudes than him, and they always outstart him. And it bit Baggett because he was fastest qualifier. Looked like he could run the paces those guys, at least in the first moto. The second moto, it seemed like he was either winded or what have you, but the first moto, he had really good pace, but he went down in that crazy first turn crash where I think it was Roczen came into the corner but then got bumped from behind. I don't remember exactly who kind of gave him a nudge, but it sent him sideways, and then he went down, and it caused a chain reaction that took out Pike and Nicoletti and Baggett, as mentioned. So, you know, Baggett ripped through the field. He got inside of the top 5. I believe he came home in 4th in that first moto. And so, you know, it was like, okay, second moto comes around. If he gets a start, he has the pace, he knows this track, he's fastest qualifier, sure, maybe he can start up there and run with those guys. And he got a decent start the second moto, but, you know, he just was not even close to their pace, and the start really hurt him, I felt like, too, where it's like, if he could just, you know, just once this year, just get a whole shot, I think it'd be really interesting, because he's that type of guy that, you know, you give him a start and he'll give you, you know, 37 minutes of chaos pretty much. Like, he's a throwdown type of guy, you know, like, get a good start and he's off to the races kind of thing. So I'm waiting for that Baggett start, waiting for him to get a whole shot and actually lead one of these things and make it interesting, because clearly speed-wise he's there. But back to Musquin and Tomac. So first moto I thought was like kind of weird how it was Tomac Musquin 1-2 off the start, and you know, Tomac's kind of slowly inching away, and very early in the first lap, Justin Barcia and Marvin Musquin got in a little tiffy, which some people saw it as cross jumping. I think Musquin definitely did cross jump Barcia coming up the hill into the like weird step up that they had to come to a complete stop on to make the corner. I think it was a mixture of cross jumping and going for the same line, like the main line. Marvin needs to do a little better job of realizing when someone's next to him, because he does cross jump and it's getting a little ludicrous on occasion. So Barcia, rightfully so, I feel like kind of, gave him a taste of his own medicine, did a little cross jump back to him in the next corner, and Marvin jumped off the track. But like, I feel like that's kind of what these guys are going to have to start doing with Musquin when it comes to the cross jumping, because he's done it, more than once in his career for sure, and it's kind of something that unfortunately he's known for. But I don't think that he's as bad of a cross jumper as some seem to believe. Like, I've seen much worse cross jumps done like fully on purpose, meant to take somebody out, and those guys kind of get off with the it's racing. So I'm not neither here nor there on the whole cross jump situation, but he definitely did it, and I think he needs to kind of like learn a little bit from it, and I'm sure he will at some point. But what was weird about the start of that moto was, like, Barcia got Marvin and then actually started reeling in Tomac. So it was like Barcia had like an extra gear early on, and Marvin was only about 5 seconds max behind Tomac at any point during this moto. So it wasn't like Tomac was gapping either of them. But for a little while, it seemed like Barcia was going to be the guy to take it to Eli and make things interesting. And then he kind of faded. Marvin got him back. And then it seemed like it got to about, I don't know, like 10 minutes into the moto, and then it was like Marvin caught fire. It was very strange because, that's been the times of the motos this year where Marvin's, well, not 10 minutes in, but, like later in the motos, Marvin seems to fall off a little bit more so than Tomac has been this year, which is kind of contrary to previous years. But Marvin caught fire, caught Tomac, and before you know it, we got this great battle for the lead going on. And it was kind of out of nowhere too, because it was almost like you had that feeling of like, well, any minute now, Tomac's going to turn it back up. He's going to start laying down fast lap after fast lap. But then if you actually go look at like the timesheets and like start looking at lap times those guys were running, it looked like Tomac did try to turn up the intensity, like tried to get away from Marvin for a few laps to open up a gap again. And Marvin wasn't having any of it. He was very strong in that middle part of the race, and I feel like it kind of wore Tomac down a little bit. Like, it made him ride a little bit out of his comfort zone, and Tomac did look a little sloppy in the first moto anyway. But by the time that they got to the like 10 minutes to go point in the moto, it seemed like it was only a matter of time when Marvin would make his move, and sure enough he did, and then pretty quickly gapped Eli. They were amidst 1,000 lapped riders, which I'll talk about that after I'm done talking about their two battles today. But like Tomac caught him again for like half a lap, but that was really more or less like lappers playing a bit of a part. And then Marvin was just gone, like just opened up a steady lead and kind of cruised it home to break the perfect season up, which, I mean, I was never on the bandwagon anyway, but I really didn't think that Marvin was going to do it. Like, I would have put Baggett or even Roczen ahead of Marvin after that early season form we saw from Marvin, that they would be able to take it to Tomac before Marvin, and neither of them were really close at High Point. It was totally Marvin that stepped up and figured it out and dethroned the perfect season, if you will. And he did it straight up, which I think was kind of crucial here. It would have kind of sucked if Tomac crashed in the first corner and someone else got out front early and he just never had a chance. But this was, totally, Tomac had the whole shot, he had the lead, and Marvin just flat caught past him and gapped him, which I was really surprised by, to be honest. So, kudos to Marvin for figuring it out, and it makes it great for us fans that he did figure it out, because that race was going to be super boring with another Tomac whole shot and, early race lead and so on and so forth. So Marvin wins the first moto, and going into the second moto, obviously he wants to go for the moto sweep. Tomac's looking to at least leave the race with as big of a points lead as he entered with, and that would mean he would win the second moto with Marvin getting second. And clearly they're the two best guys. So second moto comes around, Roczen whole shot, which, really good clean whole shot, but then he totally flubbed up the downhill rollers, which are a couple corners away from here. Like, he tried to take a line that Musquin was taking a bunch on the first lap, and it just didn't work. He totally got it all wrong, got sideways, and it held up. Muscan on the inside, and Tomac flying around the outside took full advantage of Roxon's mistake. So basically what happened was Roxon came through here, and Muscan all first moto was going right here and doubling, and then doubling around this inside so that he could double down the hill, and it was super fast the way he was able to get it done, and he actually almost made a pass on Tomac once there in the first moto. But Roxon tried to do it right off the bat in the second moto, totally messed it up, and like I said, caused an accordion with him and Muscan. Tomac flies down around the outside, and you're like, oh boy, here we go. Because Roxon was in between Marvin and Eli, and Roxon's really hard to pass, so I was kind of like I want Roxon to be up there, but I just don't think he has it today, and I was hoping that Muscan would start with Tomac so we could get like a true mano-a-mano battle once again. But to my surprise, Roxon immediately kind of got the grit between his teeth and repassed Tomac for the lead a couple corners later, and I think it kind of even took Tomac by surprise, like, whoa, I thought I had a lead going here for a second, but nope. Roxon gets him back and leads a couple laps. Marvin's kind of clawing his way back into the battle, so then Tomac retakes the lead. Marvin, I think, maybe took 2 laps to get around Roxon, but he was pretty quickly in the second, to the point where, I mean, it was like 20 minutes to go in the moto, and Marvin was on Tomac for the lead. Like, he had him in his sights. He was trying to line up passes, this, that, and the other thing. And Tomac seemed like he totally, stepped it up that second moto. He either found something, he worked on setup, or whatever it was, but their pace was blisteringly fast. It was unreal. I wasn't even there, but watching it on TV, I was like, these guys are gonna crash, because they're riding way beyond the tracks. What I felt like was way beyond the tracks, like, limits for what you can do. They were going into corners so fast, standing up on the pegs. Marvin actually 2 laps before the end absolutely destroyed this middle rut right here, trying to get around the outside of Tomac. Almost made it work. Almost came alongside of him coming down this hill. But oh my gosh, that race was so good. They were just so close together, and then they got into some lappers a couple times. Eli got screwed by lappers, and a couple times Marvin got screwed by lappers. So it was kind of a back and forth. And then there was a couple times Marvin definitely got close enough where it looked like he was going to make a pass, but I think it was more of a product of the track, breaking down and kind of one main line developing. But it looked really hard to make a pass in that second moto. Like, it looked like everywhere Marvin was going, Eli would just put his bike in the spot that made it impossible for Marvin to pass. And what I thought Marvin should have done earlier in the moto, that it took him until, like, I feel like 3 laps from the end to realize, is he should have just, and Frankie Latham even put it on Marvin's pit board early in the race, like, pick spot. And he totally should have. He should have figured out where he's getting close enough to Tomac, where, if he just, like, real quickly, like, did a quick dive down the inside in a corner, maybe chopped across a couple ruts or something, and just got in front of Tomac, just, parked him. Even if it meant Tomac fell again, like, I just felt like Marvin had the speed once he was ahead of him to get away from him, because every time he lost touch with Tomac, he would immediately get right back on him. So it just seemed like Marvin took too long to figure out, oh man, if I just was close enough in this spot, I would get him. And what I was, like, the spot I was talking about, the downhill rollers, that would have been a perfect spot for him to get close enough to where he was nearly side by side with them going over the Carmichael double. And then as they worked their way down the rollers, he could double to the inside and surprise Tomac and just end up in his line. And I mean, worst case scenario there is Tomac just runs over the back of him, because Marvin totally would have ended up ahead of him if he was close enough. But best case scenario is Tomac has to check up real bad, and Marvin still is able to do his line, and suddenly Marvin has a big gap and no retaliation effort from Tomac coming. Which, speaking of retaliation, I have to go back to the first moto for just a minute here, because everybody keeps talking about Marvin's, well, not everybody, but I keep seeing people talk about how, much of a POS Marvin is for taking out Tomac in Supercross, and I'm pretty sure most fans are well past it at this point. Like, it was, for the win, move on. Tomac clearly isn't, and I still feel like he owes Marvin one, and he had his golden opportunity in Moto 1, and he, like, half-heartedly took it and missed. And like, you only get so many of those opportunities. Like, you gotta execute on them if you're gonna make it happen. And what I'm talking about is after Marvin passed Eli coming up the uphill in the back section, which is on the top of the map, on the upper right hand corner of the screen, the top of the map, where you go through the valley and then you make it up to the top where Bradshaw's Boulevard is, and then instead of going towards the finish now, they make a U-turn and head back down the hill. Marvin went around the outside to pass Tomac for the lead there. And Tomac into the next corner, he could have ruined Marvin's day if he wanted to. Which makes me think a little bit like maybe he is moving past it as well, because he didn't. Like, he came in there, he gave Marvin a nudge, but he definitely didn't go in there to take him out, which he had, you know, I feel like every right to at that moment. And he didn't take his chance. He had a chance and he didn't take it. So I think we're moving past this little, you know, Marvin Eli feud, or at least I thought we were. And I'll get to what I'm talking about in a second, but back to the second 450 moto, it just seemed like Marvin didn't, you know, find the right spot quick enough to make that pass, and Eli was doing a masterful job of hitting his marks and staying in the lines that were faster in certain spots of the track so that, you know, Marvin couldn't get a run on him or do this or do that, or, you know, holding his inside lines in general. So great ride from Eli, great ride from Marvin as well. They both did a, you know, fantastic job making that race interesting for us in that second moto, and I love it. Like, personally speaking, neither one of those guys are like my favorite rider, so I don't really have a bone to pick in this argument, but I just want to see battles between these guys, you know. Like, if Eli goes 24-0, which he's not, but if he was, I want to see him work for it, you know. I don't want to see this, like, you know, just meander my way to the front, and before you know it, I have a 30-second lead. No, I want to see these guys, you know, pushing Eli to win this championship, which it's, you know, it seems like I said, Marvin has kind of stepped up to the plate again this year as I'm going to be that guy. I'm going to take the challenge to him. We're going to make it happen this year. So great race, great fun to watch. Obviously, Eli was able to hold him off to win that second moto. So they end up tied on points. Eli gets the overall, but no points gained in the championship for Marvin, which he kind of needed to gain because he, you know, had a bad couple rounds there, and after going 2-2 at Hangtown, if he could have gone 2-2, 2-2-2, and then went 1-1 here, it would have, you know, kind of swayed it back his way a little bit, and then he would have been only 12 points down. Now I think he's 24 down, I want to say, which isn't bad, but it's almost a whole moto, so it's, you know, pretty tough hill to climb, especially if Eli's going to be kind of consistent like he has been this year so far. But, you know, we're coming up to a couple tracks that Marvin's really good at. Muddy Creek, obviously, is another one. Redbud is kind of a wash for them, and then Southwick is a Tomac track. But I think as we get to Washougal, Budds Creek, Unadilla, those are all Marvin-type tracks. And I think that if he's still close in the championship, like last year was, we could see a sway in momentum and a bunch of things change up. But what I was going to talk about with the Tomac Musquin feud not being over yet was they had a great battle second moto. It was super clean. There was no contact. Marvin tried his hardest and he didn't, you know, throw it in on Tomac and take him out anywhere or any of this stuff. So it was a great battle, great clean racing. And then after the finish, Tomac rolls to the side of the track and kind of stops, and Marvin rolls up next to him, or tries to roll up next to him, and Eli just like gasses it away from him, is like fist pumping the crowd, revving the engine. So Marvin follows him around again and tries to roll up next to him, and Tomac just rides straight away and into the pits. And then finally Marvin pulls up next to him into the pits and is like, hey man, congrats, you know, gives him a handshake, like, good job on the ride, whatever he said. And, you know, Tomac just, like I said, it just looked like he kind of shrugged it off, which totally reminded me of Dungey and Alessi 2012 Washougal, where another great battle between them. Mike held off Dungey the entire second moto, was able to win the second moto, and then right after the race, you know, he's obviously like fist pumping, excited. He won the race, and you know, goes right up to Dungey as quick as he can, tries to shake his hand. Dungey rides right on by, so Mike has to cut across the track to go say like, hey man, good race. You know, like, thanks for riding me clean, all that business. Which, you know, I know they're feuding. I get it. I can understand if Eli's pissed, but it just shows, I feel like, poor sportsmanship if the guy's trying to give you like the credit for, you know, riding a good race and you just blow him off. Like, I don't really like that. I'm not like saying Eli needs to go over there and, like, you know, tickle his neck and say like, hey, thanks buddy for, you know, being such a great guy, haha. Like, just stop and, you know, give the courtesy handshake. Even if you want to knock him out, you know, that was something that, you know, Reed and Stewart were pretty good at. Like, they feuded, they rode past each other several times when they were mad at each other, but if they had a good race, they would always stop and handshake. You know, that was the respectful part of those two champions that I really enjoyed. Like, it kind of throws me back to Jet Reynolds at Monster Energy Cup last year in the Super Mini class. Like, won the first race, like fist pumping, and the guys come up to him, and they're trying to shake his hand, and he just totally cool guys him. And then the second moto, he goes down while leading, loses the, you know, race, loses the cup, all that business, and rides off, you know, in a pissy attitude, piss storm, so pissed off about the world and everything. It's like, that's terrible sportsmanship, man. Like, come on, you got to be a little bit better than that. So, like I said, I don't really care, because I think it adds to the drama. But as a sportsman and someone who enjoys mutual respect among talented athletes, I just wish, you know, Tomac would have, you know, taken a moment just to say like, hey man, good ride. That's how a clean race happens. You know, like, thanks for not taking me out this time. You know, even if he's snide and cynical about it, stop and shake the guy's hand. Just like Herlings and Cairoli, two guys that are, you know, sometimes at each other's throats. They're on Red Bull KTM, but they're actually not on the same team. Herlings takes out Cairoli at the British GP. Cairoli says, you know what, bygones be bygones, go up, shakes his hand after the race, says, you know, good job, totally got me, whatever. Like, that's mutual respect between champions. So that's kind of what I'm getting at here. Like I said, it doesn't make a huge difference to me, because it really does kind of add fuel to the fire for this championship. But that's just something I saw that I was kind of like, man, you know, come on, Eli. Like, just be a little bit better dude about it. But they shook hands on the podium, so I guess it was all good. And like I said, tremendous ride from Eli. Really showed that he's kind of, I feel like that ride, more than the rides that he's had this year, shows how he's matured. Because before, I feel like you get someone pressuring him like that, and he starts riding over his head like he was, and completely loses it. Like, either loses focus or whatever, and has a big crash or a mental lapse or something weird like that. But this one, he was in control from 10 minutes in till 35 minutes into that moto with, in my opinion, one of the top 5 best riders in the world right now, breathing down his neck like there was no tomorrow. So that was a really good ride from Eli, really good moto to watch, and I thought it was fantastic. So that's my thoughts and opinions on High Point. Hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to that. It was a little bit longer winded than I wanted it to be, but sometimes these end up being so. And you can see this track's gotten worn down pretty bad. I forgot to mention at the beginning of the video, I believe, but the road is on 10 for this, so essentially it replicates as if 10 riders are going over the same spot every time I go around the track, so that's why it gets pretty rough and rutted pretty quickly. But yeah, fun track, fun race to watch. Looking forward, of course, to Muddy Creek this week coming up, and should be a really good one. Hopefully Marvin keeps the momentum going. Roczen can kind of figure out where he was losing that speed, because you know, just an indication to show how like much Marvin, I think, stepped up to the plate was that, like, we all know Eli's had minute victories in him this year, like he's done it already, but Marvin and Eli both beat Roczen by like 1 minute and 10 seconds, I think it was, at the end. And Roczen was in third, all alone, no pressure from behind, like comfortable gap, and he just got flat out crushed by both of those guys. So like, I was very impressed with Tomac and his rides, but like I said, I just feel like Marvin was more impressive because of where he was before High Point, and now looking at kind of where he is, and maybe mentality has changed going forward, as you know, maybe he thinks, oh, this championship isn't over still, I can still come in and make a difference here. So like I said, looking forward to Muddy Creek. Hopefully the 250 class is a little bit more entertaining there. It definitely usually is at Muddy Creek. Muddy Creek's a pretty good race for those guys. And yeah, High Point 2018 in the books. Download this track in the description if you guys would like. And if you like this video, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, the whole usual nonsense. But thanks for watching another video here on Start Your Systems. My name is Kellen, and I'll see you guys in the next one.